two brothers, sons of a Navy SEAL. Jerome Hill, a former Baltimore PD officer and narcotics detective. Victor Hill, the former sheriff of Clayton County and author of Vigilante Sheriff. Now, they've joined forces to break down the hottest topics in law enforcement and beyond on the Hill of Justice.
Welcome to the Hill of Justice, produced by Juming Delmas Studios. I'm your host, Jerome Hill, and I'm here with our co-host, Victor Hill. Brother, I want you to take a look at this clip.
Sure.
Joining us now, Fox News contributor and former FBI Special Agent Nicole Parker. Nicole, everyone watching these terrorist attacks, these domestic terror attacks and these swatting incidents, they want action, but they want names. They want concrete charges. Every incident of violence, they want justice and now.
Right. People want to see consequences because that is what has been lacking in our Department of Justice and FBI for the last 4 years. Depending on where you stood on the political spectrum, I've said this before, with what's going on with Elon Musk and Tesla, it is absolutely disgusting. It is the epitome and definition of domestic terrorism. There is no official federal statute for domestic terrorism, but I will recite straight from the FBI's website what the definition of domestic terrorism is, and you will see it falls straight into that category. Violent criminal acts committed by individuals and/or groups to further ideological goals stemming from domestic influences such as those of political nature. That is.
Your thoughts? Is it domestic terrorism?
Oh, definitely domestic terrorism. Is this where we disagree, brother?
Well, you got to have the elements of the crime all fit together on this one. And I'm not quite sure that Nicole is being straightforward with her audience, particularly with the fact that it has to be, although first and foremost, I think we both can say that we condone no acts of violence, which we're clear on that. But the problem with this, how she's trying to define terrorism, at least through the FBI's eyes, is you have to have, first of all, some act of danger to human life, right? Then you have to go ahead and it has to meet all these elements. You have to intimidate and coerce a civilian population, influence government or its policies, and then affect the conduct of government. However, I'm not quite sure we've reached that with every single act of violence. Certainly, vandalism is part of it, but you know, and I could get into more and more and more. But I just wanted to know why it meets your element of domestic
Okay,
terrorism.
well, I don't know what she was reading off the FBI website, but I tell you what, let's go to the AI definition, and I'm looking at it right here. Who knows better than AI?
Mhm.
It says terrorism is the use of violence or the threat of violence, often against civilians, to instill fear and achieve political, religious, or ideological goals, typically targeting government or societies to intimidate or coerce them. I think that's exactly what we got. We got a group of people that they're mad because the president chose Elon Musk to be his advisor. Um, and they're using this as a way to intimidate the government or intimidate people who support this by saying don't drive his cars or your life could be in danger. We're talking about endangering people's lives. When you talk about putting incendiary devices in cars, that's endangering people's lives. And I think both sides should see this clearly because just like this shouldn't be happening, we don't condone driving into a group of boycotters, even though that's actually their right to boycott if that's what they want to do. Um, you know,
Mm.
let me say this. When I was sheriff, I used to look for very unique people to come in and help with the sheriff's office. Um, my SWAT team, like most SWAT teams around the country, whether we want to admit it or not, was not hostage rescue ready. Most SWAT teams are guys that are civilians that become cops and they may not have military experience, which is very important. The majority of my team was like that. So what did I do? I employed ex Navy SEALs, ex Delta, ex ex guys like that to come in. Some of these guys had never been cops before, but they had dealt with unique circumstances that I knew they could train my team and take it to the next level. So it's not uncommon for a person in government, if they're thinking outside the box and they want to take something to the next level, to find someone who they feel has some unique abilities or unique perspective to take them to the next level. Okay, if you agree with it, fine. If you don't agree with it, fine. This is supposed to be a country where I may not agree with a word you say, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. That was said, actually, believe it or not, that was said by a woman, even though it was said to a man.
Mhm.
So let's take chauvinism out of it. A woman said that in leadership, and she was absolutely right. And I think that to allow this type of craziness to go on, it needs to be handled. It needs to be treated as terrorism. Rather, and then I don't want to get too much into, um, you know, the Webster dictionary or how we define it. Whether you want to call it whatever you want to call it, they need to be locked up, and they need to be out of here. And we need to make sure we're at a point in this country where people are not intimidated. If you want to buy a Tesla, that's your right. If you want to support a particular candidate, that's your right. But to have people try to intimidate them because they feel that way is not right. Just like it's not right for that guy to drive into a group of them, whether we agree with them or not.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. My issue becomes where they put up a blanket statement saying that everything is domestic terrorism. You're not going to go ahead and tell somebody like me, if you take a can of spray paint and put um, F Elon all over a showroom, that that's terrorism. That doesn't, one, fit the definition 100%, and two, when you go ahead and start with that slippery slope down there, what's next? We could. I remember way back in 2021, we had, I believe, Governor DeSantis at the time went about going ahead and having tougher laws for protests, right? So at that point in time, we have a roadway system here called 826, and we call it 826 because of so many people dying on that road in car accidents. But you see a bunch of Cubans, and shout out to all my Cubanos, they, lining up the road protesting. Okay, is we can label that domestic terrorism. You know how? Because even though they're peaceful and they're blocking the free flow of vehicular traffic, what if somebody has to go to the hospital? They didn't define that as domestic terrorism now. Then, so why now?
Well, I mean, to me, they're both domestic terrorism. Like I said, there's a difference between protesters and disruptors or people or rioters. And I write a lot about that in my book, Vigilante Sheriff. There's a big difference. Protesters are people trying to make a point and they're trying to get their voice heard. But anytime you do anything that endangers the life of somebody, and like you're saying, if you're holding up traffic, and even though you may have a point, you're endangering people's lives. I'm sure if our dearly departed mother needed to get to the hospital, we would be upset about that, like everyone who has a mother who couldn't make it to the hospital because of that. So you're endangering
Mhm.
people's lives. I think they're both domestic terrorism, and again, I don't know. Again, when we start getting into terms and arguing over terms, it's like bureaucracy. Whether you want whatever you want to call it is wrong, and it needs to be done away with. If you want to protest, that's fine. That's what this country is based on. But when you start
Yeah.
doing things that endanger people's lives directly or indirectly, that's when we cross over to the line. Again, we're supposed to be able to agree to disagree. You and I disagree on a whole lot of stuff, but after we get off this podcast, we're probably going to argue before we get off the podcast. But when we get off, I'm not going to go set your car on fire, and I'm not going to stand in front of the interstate either. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right, right. I just, for me, it's just a little bit rich, that, we talk about infringing people's, on their rights, and their free speech, and calling, isn't this a form of lawfare? If you're going to go ahead and say to yourself, you know what? Yeah, these people went about spray painting my whole showroom. You know what? Yeah, that's vandalism. That's graffiti. Let's go ahead and do domestic terrorism on that charge. when ideologically, I get your point where you're saying, hey, guess what? The definition doesn't, or we shouldn't be squabbling over the definition, but we also have to meet where the punishment meets the crime.
Right. And I think the punishment is going to be different for vandalism than it is for the Molotov cocktail. Blowing something up and whatever. I'm sure that those people, if handled correctly, are not going to get as much time as the next, but it still needs to be dealt with. And, again, lawfare is when you use the criminal justice system because a person is about to win an election, you don't want them to win, or you think they can win, or it's using the criminal justice system to incarcerate someone, which I know a whole lot about because I've been the victim of that. And we've seen that across the country. We've seen it with the president and everything else. Then terrorism is when you're actually, well, it could be assassination attempt, it could be bombs, it could be whatever like that. Both are equally as wrong. I mean, just like we have different charges for
Mm.
different things. I mean, if we want to get technical, there's a difference between murder, uh, malice murder, and manslaughter. One has malice
Mm.
aforethought, and one is in a heat of passion, and then of course you have one that's unintentional. And of course I understand what you're saying. If we're saying we want the proper charge that fit each crime, well, of course. I mean, we're not going to charge somebody for vandalism what we would charge for an incendiary device. But at the end of the day, all of it is wrong. Lawfare is definitely wrong. I've been a
Yeah.
victim of it. I'm against it. But this is wrong too. You're talking about something that can actually seriously injure or kill people, and that has to be
Yeah.
dealt with.
One of the things I'm thinking of right away is if it wasn't Elon Musk, if it wasn't his businesses, and it was a small mom and pop store, would they get this level of attention? Because the FBI launched this task force, as you know, and this vandalism that's going on against Elon's vehicles and of course his businesses that's associated with Tesla. What kills me on top of that is that I think a lot of people they feel the same way that we do, especially if you're out there putting incendiary vices out there to kill or maim somebody or even to blow up something like that. We know very well what the unintended consequences or the intended consequences can be to have metal go through flesh, and what type of damage it does. But it still behooves. I guess when I'm thinking about this whole thing is that um, you know because we are trying to put an end, a means to an end, are we going to go, or I guess people are going to say we're going to be too heavy handed. And should we go too heavy handed to go ahead and put a stop to not only something like this, but for other acts of violence that have occurred? And if that's the case, then people are going to throw up January 6th right in your face.
Yeah, but let me tell you this. Here's what we got to understand about this. You and I were both law enforcement officers, and we responded to a lot of shootings. And and I don't think that we felt that one life was more important than the other. But let me say this: when a cop gets shot, there's a reason why you see that type of response. Because if someone will shoot a cop and he has no respect for authority, he's an extreme danger to the public. I mean, basically, what
Mm.
you're doing is you're shooting at something put in place in order to keep society bonded together. So there's a reason you see the type of response when a cop is assaulted. Well, you know, so it is with our government. This is not. They're not attacking Ford or Chevrolet. They're attacking Tesla because the man who owns it is an advisor to the president, and they don't like that.
Mhm.
And basically they're
Yeah.
trying to attack his business because of his affiliation. Okay, again, whether you agree or not with whoever's in power, they still were chosen by the majority of the electorate, and we have to respect that, and we have to respect their
Mhm.
decisions. The majority of the people voted for this person to come in and make those decisions. Whether we agree with it is fine. We can all agree or disagree. That's fine. but that's not how we're supposed to handle the type of things that happen in this country. It's wrong. So it's going to bring a high level of attention. Quite frankly, I'm glad they're bringing the FBI in, and I'm happy to see that the FBI is finally being used for something, for some real crimes, instead of just going after politicians like they have been doing prior. That's what the FBI is supposed to be here for, to deal with situations like this, instead of just going after politicians or being political cops. So, I'm actually looking forward to becoming a fan of the FBI again, because they're under new leadership. We all know the leadership theory. Whatever the leader is, the organization is. If the leader's strong, the organization is strong. If the leader's weak, the organization is weak. If the leader's corrupt, the organization is corrupt. Well, the leadership we've had
Mm.
at the FBI has not been that impressive. Now, we actually got someone who looks like he's strong enough to do the right thing and lead them in a new direction. And now the FBI can probably go back to being what they were really intended to be in the first place.
Well, I would say that that was more so the DOJ that plays a huge part more so than the FBI.
Well,
And so
yeah,
that was
brother, I
what
got to
my thoughts.
interrupt you on that. They work hand in hand. The FBI carries out a lot of investigations. Like in the case where I wrote a book about my case, it was FBI that actually investigated, and they were used to carry out the investigation, and the DOJ was used to prosecute it, and it was clearly a political prosecution. But because they work hand in hand, and because of the leadership and everyone who was in charge, the DOJ and the FBI were used for political prosecutions. Okay. If
Mhm.
they're used for
I think
what
it.
they're intended to be used for, we can get some crime solved. This is crime. Whether you
Mm,
like
no.
who's in charge, whether you like the fact that he's an advisor to the president, if people can just come and blow up a car at his business, well, when you start a business, what happens when they come and start blowing up the stuff that you're selling because they don't agree with you? So it is a high priority. There's a lot at stake here. This has a lot to do. There are people who own businesses, and they have a right to support whatever candidate they want to support. They have a right to be an advisor to the president if they get offered it. And just because they make decisions that's not popular with everybody, that don't mean they should get their property blown up. And let me just say this. Here, let's the reality. Let's talk about the reality of how do you, what is it called, Doge or whatever? Okay.
Mm,
The truth of the matter, not all, and I'm not gonna say most, but there's a lot of government employees that are just plain lazy, and they're not gonna do anything unless they're made to do so. Ask me how I know. I
right.
ran a governmental agency for years, and if I didn't make them do the job, they weren't gonna do the job. The government jobs are like a hustle. You're gonna get paid whether you perform or not. So most people prefer not to perform. We just saw a situation where you got what 2,000 IRS agents that were allegedly working from home. I got a friend of mine who's married to one of them, and he said that he was so thankful they sent her back to work. He was thinking about changing the Republican Party. So he saw the ridiculousness of it, and it's his wife, and she haven't been to work. Okay, so when you come in, because I've done this, I had to come in and find out, okay, what exactly do you do now all day? And I found out a lot of people wasn't doing jack. And when I actually made them start working, they got mad. And there was a lot of retaliation over that. Who do you think were some of the main people that came to my trial to testify against me? Folks that I fired or actually
Mm,
demoted because they weren't doing anything. So this is a great thing. I mean, most people, when you go to work, they have to work for 8 hours pay. But when you got a job where you can take 3 hour lunches and no one's checking to see what you're doing and your productivity is not there and you get paid whether productivity is there or not, that's a waste. Nobody should be mad about that. I think
uh-huh.
that's great. I had to do it.
Yeah. I tell you, wasn't going to be people are going to be mad at the take you just did. So you want to protect your car. Hopefully, it's not a Tesla. I didn't see it. So I just want to say, if you do, night night, because that car is getting blown up probably before 9 o'clock tonight, because that was out of control. And then, you know, so you got that's going on. I agree. I agree that, first of all, uh, the level and the acts of violence um, are completely out of order. And I'm with you. That has to go ahead and be dealt with swiftly, as strongly as possible. Because somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody innocent is going to get hurt. And we could, as you see, we could go down this rabbit hole, but it's child's play at first, and then it gets real serious because nobody's getting the satisfaction that they want because they want this all the time. You know, if you hate Elon, ignore his overvalued Teslas and his companies. They were tanking anyway because he overinflated everything anyhow. It was
The
going to
stock
happen
went up
by
today. The
happenstance
stock went
anyway.
up today, Jerome. But go ahead.
It did.
Yeah, it
Oh,
did.
oh,
Watch the
it went
stock
up
market
today.
every day. It went up today. So, but keep going.
Oh, what, by a dollar? By a dollar?
You got jokes, but keep going.
He got a long way to go. But
Okay.
he's a billionaire, right? But every time Tesla gets vandalized in any type of way, I just think that it gives free press to him and makes him a victimized, like a genius, if you will. And he's nothing but that. In fact, he's a guy who suffers on the spectrum. I believe that he has au- Asperger's, as autism, or
A
whoever
guy
somebody
that
said
just
to me,
rescued
ass
two
hat
people from
burgers.
outer space is not, what are you saying? He
That
just
guy,
rescued some folks they left out there.
he personally had SpaceX go up there and do that.
Okay, he was
Because last time
responsible.
I
They
checked,
brought it.
SpaceX was
Was
blowing up all
it?
over the place.
Right. Okay, so now you
Yeah,
let me,
because
okay, so let me, so this brings up something else. This brings up something else. What I call the Robert Ford syndrome. I'm not trying to say you suffer from that. You're my brother, so we're not doing that. Okay. But the Ford syndrome is clear. Okay. Who's Robert Ford? He
right.
shot Jesse James in the back
Hmm.
because he thought that by attacking him that it would make him his legend the same or whatever like that. Well, what we see a lot now is there are a lot of people that are being victimized because of their success. Meaning, if you got money, if you got power, then everybody is like, okay, well, I want to see him go to jail. I want to see criminal charges or whatever like that. And that's not right. That's not right. A lot
Hmm.
of people think that if you're a celebrity, if you're rich, that you're immune. Actually, you become a target. You got a lot of Robert Ford
Hmm.
syndrome prosecutors out here, and they're just
Hmm.
looking for somebody to prosecute that has a name or something. We saw it with Alec Baldwin when they tried to charge him with murder. You see all the craziness we got here in Atlanta and Fulton County with the DA here. Just coming up with crazy charges that don't make any sense, trying to make a name for themselves. And I think we need to be real careful with that. The man's a millionaire. Obviously, he knows something. If he created this type of car, he knows something. If he's up there in outer space, and there's a reason for that. But to say we hate the guy and say he's this and that, I see that as an attack. And I see that a lot on celebrities. I see that a lot on people with power, a lot of people with money. I've been the victim of it. I was a victim of a political prosecution. Basically, like my attorney said, if you weren't Victor Hill, you wouldn't have got prosecuted. And so,
Right.
you know, I don't think we should prosecute him in a court of public opinion. I mean, he was chosen to be an advisor, and
Mm.
obviously he knows something.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and it's
here's
not
my.
like it's not like he needs the money.
Well, yeah, he's gonna need the money for what's going on with Tesla now, especially if, and more importantly, if you got what he's doing well is Starlink. Starlink happens to be the coveted technology that the world wants, but his SpaceX and his Tesla. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that, I think the best revenge for anybody, if we're talking about silent protests and so on and so forth, it's just let his irrelevant cars rot. Stop making him a martyr. You're actually making him, bigger than life when you do stuff like this. And and then you add on to a touch of violence, of course, people are going to be taken back by it. My contention against him is the fact that, a lot of people believe that he's smart, and I'm not doubting that, but he's certainly not clever. And there's a very distinct difference about that. You know, a smart person is, if we take, okay, a river, okay, and you got two people. You got one who's smart, one who's clever. You got the smart person saying, guess what? I'm gonna build a bridge to get over onto that, or to the other side of the river. The other person, what he's doing is, oh, look at that. That's a down tree. I'm gonna just walk over the bridge. I'm gonna just walk over the tree right now to get to the other side. One's quick, and the other one's more methodical. And
But but
so,
but, but now, but see
I think
again,
there's
we're
places
picking,
for that.
brother, we're picking on him because he's rich and he's high profile. How many people do we look at and say, well, he's smart, but he's not clever, or he's clever, but he's not smart? I, I think, again, celebrities, people who have a lot of money, they are they are over criticized and victimized because of the money they have, because of the power they have. So there's all this critique. Okay, well, he's smart, but he's not clever or whatever like that. Okay, whether he's smart or whether he's clever, he's a billionaire. Something
Hmm.
that we haven't done yet, and I hope we do. But
Hmm.
that's what it is. I mean, we don't go look at the mom and pop store, or whatever, the people who own the McDonald franchises, and say, well, he owns five McDonald's. He's smart, but he's not clever. I think I think we got to
Mm.
understand that just because a person has money, just because he's a celebrity, they can be victimized too, and they are victimized a lot. And a lot of times they're victimized
Mhm.
because of their status, because of their money. They're over criticized, you know. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
that comes from people insecurities or whatever like that. The man is successful, good. He's got a position advising the president, good for him. Um, and l- let's hope they accomplish great things. But I think it's wrong
Yeah.
that what's going
Yeah.
on. I don't
I will.
agree with it,
Uh,
and I don't agree with it. I don't
no.
agree with lawfare. I don't agree with terrorism. I'm against it, and I
Mm.
believe if the president calls you next week and he decides he wants you to be his advisor, I don't want anybody blowing up your car because you pick me up from the airport every time I come to Florida.
Hey, guess what?
Uh huh.
If I have 400, if I have $400 billion,
Right.
blow that thing up. I'll be okay. I'll just get another one.
That's
I'll
the
be,
point. But I still
and
want the
quite truthfully,
FBI to come and investigate it. I want you
yeah.
directed to send the FBI to find out who blew up my brother's car because it's not right. Because the other car you give me, they might blow that one up too. So I'm glad the FBI is in. I
You know
hope
what?
they find all of them.
And I'm with you on that. I guess the other part of thinking of that too is, if I'm also a 400 billionaire, billionaire, I want to go ahead and, I think I'm going to be able to take out of all the bad words said to me in my life. uh, I think I'm going to be okay. Somebody talking bad about me too. At that stage.
Well, they talk
Um,
bad about us all, but
I get your point.
but but
Yeah.
you're right. They talk bad about us all, but I think they take it to a whole nother level. And like I said, I know what it's like
Mm.
to be a target because I hold a certain position or because you have a name. And it's not right. That's not what the legal system is meant for. That's not what this great country is made for. Listen, when we were kids, they told both of us you could be anything you want to do. You can run for the president of the United States. That's what they told us. They didn't tell us that we could get
Exactly.
locked up for it, that we were going to get indicted for it, that people were going to shoot at us for it, or that if we're friends with someone and we want them to advise them, that people are going to attack his company. That's not what this country was based on. This country is supposed to be. This is supposed to be
Yeah.
freedom of religion, where regardless of what religion you are, you can worship the Father or who you believe in, free of any type of persecution. And we're supposed to be able to have political opinions or support who we want without having the fear that our car is going to be blown up or we're going to be ostracized or criticized or put in a
You,
certain group. Um, I don't know how this started, but it's ridiculous. People
you,
have the right to choose who they want to choose, support who they want to choose, and we also need to respect. I think Bill Maher put it well. He was invited to go visit the president, and I thought what he said was profound. I can't remember it verbatim, but it's something to the fact that more than half of the country voted for the president.
Mm,
So are we supposed to hate
mm,
all of them? Or all of them don't know what they're talking about? That's ridiculous.
yeah.
The majority has spoken.
No,
We need to respect it, respect the office, respect the man, and move forward and quit acting like kids.
I think a lot of people when they go ahead and attack Elon Musk in particular is because he constantly talks about free speech and censorship. But what generally happens, particularly with his platform, either you're going to support free speech when it's possible, um, even when it's against you or you don't like it. But he has his own brand of censorship on that end of it, and it's not congruent to what he wants
What's his brand
in
of
terms of free
censorship?
speech.
Who did he censor?
Oh, oh yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, you didn't know? Oh, on Twitter or on X? Excuse me, it's not Twitter any longer. So what you have here on that end, something that he doesn't like. So there's always time delays. People are always they can't go ahead and get onto their page. And there's all these issues that pop up that it just by happenstance was working completely fine before that tweet went out. Or that post went out, and then obviously once it starts gaining traction, there's some issues. So I think that's where both sides go in. But it's neither here nor there. Either you support free speech, like we're talking about, if it's for
But
you or
blowing
against
up
you.
the man's
The
car is not
entertainment
free
is
speech. That's not free
no,
speech.
no, no. I agree
It's
with you.
terrorism. Yeah.
No, 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 no. I know, that's ridiculous. I'm not supporting that. I don't care to support that. For people who are doing stuff like that, they think that that's a proper form of protest. It's not. It's disgusting. You're going to hurt somebody bad. You need to go to jail. I'm not quite sure if a FBI task force has to be descending upon you. I'm sure that local and state officials can easily go ahead and handle that.
Yeah, but
I
now
just
the
don't
FBI
understand
could
why
do
we're
some
doing that.
real police work, which they were intended to do. So I'm happy. And they're not out looking for politicians to win elections like they did when these other cases and in my cases. I'm happy to see the leader of the
Yeah.
FBI. Hey, let's do some real police work and let's go after some real criminals. I think it's great. I think the FBI can now become what it was intended to be.
Yeah, well, you know what? On that note, that's it for today. you know, I'm Jerome Hill with Victor Hill. This is the Hill of Justice. Please like, subscribe. We
Yes.
appreciate individuals out there. Keep on giving us suggestions. You're doing a great job on that end of it. We really do appreciate you supporting the channel, and we just want to keep on bringing out incredible content to you. So
And
from
brother,
me,
even though you
Jerome
said something
Hill,
that
and
hurt, and even though you said something that hurt my feelings, I'm not gonna blow up your car. You know why? Because
okay.
we agree to disagree. I love you, brother.
Oh, I thought it was because I had a bike. I thought I had because I had a bike. All right, take care, everyone. Be safe.
All right, take care.